Have you ever noticed that the loudest person in the room usually has the least to say? That the ones who fill the air with noise rarely move the needle, and the ones who sit still, who watch, who wait, somehow walk out with the deal? The respect and the power. We were raised to believe that speaking up is strength, that silence means weakness, that if you don't keep talking, you'll be forgotten, outmaneuvered, or ignored. But what if that's the greatest lie of modern life? What if your silence, not your speech, is the part of you the world fears most? In America, we celebrate big voices. We admire the bold pitch, the confident presentation, the person who can sell the room. But quietly, you've felt the hidden cost, the exhaustion after over-explaining yourself, the regret after saying too much, the hollow feeling when you realize you traded mystery for approval. You've been told to use your voice. No one told you that your voice can leak power when it's undisciplined. No one taught you that silence used with intent is not absence, it's ammunition. You know this in your bones. You've watched the colleague who talks circles, who argues every point, who never stops performing. And you've watched the other one, the calm one, say 5 words at the right moment and shut the whole conversation down. You've watched the person who pauses, breathes, and speaks once, only once, change the direction of a decision. Somewhere inside, you've wished you had that kind of presence. Maybe you've carried a private irritation. Why do I feel the need to explain myself? Why do I rush to fill silence that belongs to me? Why do I walk out of meetings more drained than decisive? The truth is simple. You were trained for noise. Our culture rewards speed. Hot takes, instant replies, constant updates, communication as a reflex, not a craft. We confuse attention with respect and performance with persuasion. We measure influence by volume, not by impact. But power, real power, doesn't shout. It calibrates. It chooses moments the way a surgeon chooses where to cut precisely, minimally, irreversibly. And nothing calibrates power like silence. Silence is not what you use when you have nothing to say. Silence is what you use when you want what you say to matter. Silence is the difference between a reaction and a decision, between a performance and a verdict. It is the space where you gather information others spill by accident, the pause where you drain emotion out of your response, the stillness where your presence grows heavier than anyone's words. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The leader who governs himself governs events. The undisciplined tongue betrays the undisciplined mind. He never argued for passivity. He argued for control. Control of timing, control of image, control of impulse. Silence is control in motion. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to fake confidence or memorize tricks. You need to reclaim the one tool that has been stolen from you by a world addicted to noise, your right to say nothing until saying something changes everything. In this film, we will explore the power of strategic silence, the kind that listens with purpose, that observes before it speaks, that guides conversations without wrestling for attention. We'll break down why people overtalk when they feel weak, and how silence repairs authority. We'll show you how to control pace, create mystery without lying, win conflicts without shouting, and turn listening into influence. We'll draw a clear moral line because silence can heal or it can harm, and we will use it to protect, not to punish. If you've ever felt misunderstood, underestimated, or mentally exhausted by a world that demands constant speech, this is your refuge. Here we don't burn energy to look powerful. We conserve energy to be powerful. And we don't raise our voices to force respect. We lower our pulse until respect arrives on its own. If that resonates with the part of you that's tired of performing, join us. Subscribe and stay with this circle of thinkers who choose wisdom over noise, clarity over chaos, and power over impulse. We make content for people who don't need a stage to be significant. We make content for people like you, calm, meticulous, inwardly dangerous. Because in a culture that screams, the quiet mind becomes the rarest signal of strength. And once you learn to wield silence the way the best strategists do, you'll never need to explain your worth again. You'll demonstrate it one measured pause at a time. Have you ever noticed that the loudest person in the room usually has the least to say? that the ones who talk the most often achieve the least, and that the ones who stay quiet, not out of fear, but out of calculation, always seem to win in the end. You see, we were raised to believe that speaking up is strength. That silence means weakness. But what if that's the biggest lie society ever sold you? Because in a world that never stops talking, silence becomes the rarest form of power. Maybe you felt it, that quiet voice inside you that wants to stop explaining, stop defending, stop wasting words on people who don't listen. Maybe you've realized that every time you talk too much, you give away a piece of your strategy, a piece of your mystery, a piece of your peace, and deep down, you know it's time to stop bleeding power through your tongue. In this video, we'll uncover what Machiavelli understood centuries ago, that silence is not absence, it's ammunition. It doesn't mean submission, it means strategy. And once you learn how to use silence like a weapon, you'll never need to raise your voice to command respect again. If you've ever felt misunderstood, underestimated, or drained by a world addicted to noise, hit subscribe and join this circle of thinkers who choose wisdom over noise, clarity over chaos, and power over impulse. Because here, we don't shout for attention. We earn it through quiet mastery. The modern world is addicted to noise. Every second, someone is posting, arguing, performing, desperate to be seen, desperate to be heard. Social media has turned the human mind into a stage, and everyone's fighting for the spotlight. But here's the problem: when everyone is speaking, no one is listening. We've mistaken attention for respect. We chase likes instead of influence, reactions instead of results. People speak not because they have something valuable to say, but because they're terrified of being forgotten. And the louder they shout, the more invisible they become. Noise has become the new camouflage. It hides insecurity behind confidence, ignorance behind passion, and weakness behind volume. Most people aren't communicating anymore. They're performing anxiety in real time. The tragedy: we're surrounded by words, yet starved for meaning. We scroll for hours, but rarely hear anything that changes us. And in this endless sea of noise, the rarest sound of all is silence. Because silence is not empty, it's clarity. And clarity is power. People talk too much because silence terrifies them. When you're silent, you can hear your own doubts, your insecurities, your fears echoing back at you. So most people drown those echoes with noise. They talk to fill the space, not to express truth. Psychologists call it compensatory communication, the instinct to speak when we feel powerless. We fill the air with words because silence feels like loss of control. We mistake noise for dominance when in reality, it's the confession of weakness. Think about it: the moment someone starts defending themselves too much, they're already losing authority. The moment they can't stop explaining, they've lost respect. The more you talk, the more emotional you become. The more emotional you become, the less strategic you are. True strength never competes for volume. It listens, it waits, and when it finally speaks, every word lands like a verdict. Picture this: a high-stakes corporate meeting, 10 executives fighting to impress the CEO. Everyone's talking over one another, throwing ideas, numbers, buzzwords, ego disguised as insight. The room is hot with noise. And in the corner, one man says nothing. He listens, takes notes, occasionally nods. No interruption, no approval, no reaction. 10 minutes pass. 20. The chaos continues until the CEO turns to him and says, "You've been quiet." What do you think he waits 2 seconds before answering? Not out of hesitation, but precision. Then he says one sentence, just one, that cuts through every opinion, every argument, every ounce of confusion in the room. The room falls silent. Everyone realizes he just summarized what they'd been trying to say for an hour. That's when it hits you. Silence isn't passive. It's surgical. The man who speaks last often speaks best, because while others are busy being heard, he's been busy understanding. And when understanding meets timing, that's not communication anymore. That's power. Most people leave conversations feeling drained, not because they gave too much truth, but because they gave too many words. They replay every sentence in their head, wondering how they sounded, whether they were understood or if they said too much. That's the silent hangover of over-talking exhaustion without progress. You've felt it too, haven't you? That heavy silence after an argument when you realize half of what you said came from emotion, not reason. That regret that whispers, "If I had just stayed quiet, I would have kept my power." Noise gives temporary relief but permanent weakness. Every time you talk to prove yourself, you admit you need validation. And every time you fill the silence, you tell the world you can't handle it. The truth is simple: silence doesn't hurt you. It exposes you. And only those who fear their own reflection rush to cover it with noise. There comes a moment when the noise around you becomes unbearable, not because it's loud, but because it's meaningless. You stop wanting to speak. You stop needing to prove. And somewhere between the chaos and the calm, something inside you changes. You realize silence was never the enemy. It was the training ground. It's where you learn to observe what others miss, to control what others waste, to think while others react. That's the shift when you stop trying to be heard and start aiming to understand. When you stop speaking from emotion and start speaking from intent. When you realize the real battlefield isn't outside, it's inside your own restraint. From that moment on, silence stops feeling like weakness. It feels like strategy. And strategy in a world addicted to noise is the ultimate rebellion. This is where transformation begins, the birth of what Machiavelli would call strategic intelligence. The weak speak to be noticed. The wise observe to understand. Every powerful person you've ever met has one thing in common: they never rush to speak first. They let others reveal themselves. In conversation, silence is reconnaissance. It's how you gather data, tone, emotion, contradiction, insecurity. While others talk to fill space, you study what they're protecting. Machiavelli once wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does at last." Observation is that at once. It's your first move in any strategic exchange. Picture a negotiation. The other person throws out numbers, opinions, assumptions, desperate for your reaction. Most people can't resist responding. They reveal their position too early. But the strategist listens not passively but surgically. Every unnecessary word from the opponent is a gift. Every silence you hold is leverage building quietly in your favor. Observation creates anticipation. Anticipation creates control. And control, that's the currency of influence. So before you speak, ask yourself, do I want to express or do I want to understand? Because those who understand will always outmaneuver those who only want to be heard. Power isn't just what you say, it's when you say it. Every pause, every moment of silence between sentences is a weapon most people never learn to use. In any conversation, timing is dominance. The one who controls the rhythm controls the frame. When you rush to respond, you enter someone else's tempo, their emotional frequency. But when you slow down, when you let silence stretch just long enough to make others uncomfortable, they start adjusting to you. Try it. The next time someone challenges you, don't respond immediately. Hold their gaze, breathe once, twice, let the air thicken, then speak slowly, deliberately, as if every word costs energy. You'll notice something fascinating. People will start leaning in. They'll hang on your words, not because you said something profound, but because you made them wait for it. Machiavelli understood that urgency is a symptom of weakness. When you rush, you reveal desire. When you pause, you project control. The strategist's silence isn't hesitation, it's calculation. And when you command the pace, you don't just speak with power. You own the room. Everyone wants to be understood, but the powerful prefer to be misunderstood just enough. In a world that overshares, mystery is the new magnet. When people can't fully read you, they start imagining you, and imagination is far more persuasive than explanation. The human mind fills blanks with projection, often in your favor. Machiavelli once said, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you truly are." That's not deception, it's design. The most influential figures don't lie. They simply reveal their truth in fragments, never all at once. Think of a chessboard. If your opponent can see every piece of your plan, you've already lost. But if they can't predict your next move, they start reacting instead of leading. mystery makes them cautious, and cautious people are easier to control. You don't owe the world your transparency. You owe yourself your advantage. Be open enough to be trusted, but closed enough to stay unpredictable. Because once people can completely define you, they can control you. Power isn't proven in how loud you argue, it's revealed in how calm you stay. Imagine this. Two people in a heated argument. One is shouting, waving hands, repeating themselves, desperate to be understood. The other stands still. No reaction, no interruption, eyes steady. The louder one feels victorious, until they realize they've been performing for someone who never lost composure. Minutes later, their anger collapses under its own weight. The calm person speaks only once, a single sentence, measured, factual, precise. The fight ends not because they won the argument, but because they never competed for it. Machiavelli would have smiled at that moment. He knew that emotion is the greatest ally of manipulation. The one who stays calm can steer the storm. Silence in conflict isn't surrender, it's strategy. It shifts attention. It exposes weakness. It forces the other person to reveal more than they planned. The fool fights to be right. The strategist observes to stay in control. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this law. You don't have to attend every battle you're invited to. Sometimes, your absence from the noise is the loudest victory of all. Silence doesn't just protect you, it reveals others. Most people don't listen to understand. They listen to respond. That's why genuine listening feels magnetic. It's rare. It disarms. It makes people drop their guard because they finally feel seen. When you stay silent and let someone speak, they start showing you their fears, their values, their triggers. Every complaint hides a wound. Every brag hides an insecurity. Every opinion hides a need for validation. Machiavelli observed that power lies in knowing what people desire most, and nothing exposes desire faster than being heard. When you mirror their words with calm presence, you become the quiet space where they reveal themselves. In business, this turns silence into intelligence. In relationships, it turns patience into influence. You don't win people by dominating them. You win by understanding what governs them. And understanding is born in silence. So next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to fill every pause. Let them talk. Let them project. Because while they think you're listening, you're mapping their mind. The most powerful person in any room isn't the one doing the talking. It's the one everyone's talking to. Silence is powerful, but like any weapon, it can wound or protect. Used wisely, it builds respect. Used carelessly, it breeds fear. Some people use silence to punish, to manipulate, to make others feel small. That's not strategy. That's emotional cowardice disguised as strength. Machiavelli never preached cruelty without purpose. He warned against it. Power without ethics collapses under its own corruption. Ethical silence is restraint with intention. You stay quiet, not to make someone suffer, but to stay in control of your reaction. You hold your tongue, not because you lack courage, but because you value clarity more than chaos. There's a difference between silence that heals and silence that harms. The first protects your energy. The second poisons your relationships. So when you choose silence, ask yourself, am I protecting peace or avoiding truth? Am I being strategic or just scared to speak? Real mastery isn't about never talking. It's about knowing when your words will create order and when they'll create destruction. Because true power doesn't need to humiliate. It only needs to understand and act when the timing serves justice, not ego. True silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of power. When you walk into a room and people turn without knowing why, that's presence. It's not your status, your money, or your voice. It's the energy of self-control radiating from someone who doesn't need attention to feel significant. People can sense composure. They feel when someone is anchored, when nothing external can shake their center. That stability commands respect far deeper than any speech ever could. Machiavelli understood this in rulers and generals alike. The greatest leaders rarely shouted. They simply were. Their presence did the speaking. Presence is built in private. It's born from self-discipline, from mastering your impulses, from learning to sit with discomfort instead of reacting to it. The man who has conquered his own noise no longer needs to conquer others. So when you enter a room, don't rush to fill it. Let your calm speak. Let your silence stretch, because power isn't about being heard, it's about being felt. And when your presence carries weight, even silence becomes a language. At that point, you no longer need to declare your authority. You embody it. He used to be the loudest in the room, always talking, always explaining, always trying to prove that he belonged. Every meeting, every argument, every dinner table turned into a battlefield of validation. And yet the more he spoke, the less people seemed to listen. One day during a promotion review, his boss said something that froze him. "You have great ideas, but you talk too much to sound confident." It hit harder than an insult, because it was true. He realized his voice wasn't power, it was panic. Every word he threw into the world was an attempt to escape insecurity. So he decided to do something radical. He stopped talking unless it mattered. He started observing before speaking. He learned to let others fill the silence, to let noise reveal truth. At first, people were confused. They asked if he was upset, distant, even arrogant. But within weeks, something shifted. Meetings began to quiet when he entered. People started waiting for his opinion. And when he finally spoke, every word carried weight. He hadn't changed who he was. He had changed his relationship with silence. Because silence doesn't make you smaller, it makes everything around you reveal its true size. That's how you move from noise to mastery. Silence isn't passive, it's a discipline. And like any discipline, it can be trained. Here's the Machiavellian framework. Pause. Observe. Respond. Step 1. Pause. When something provokes you, an insult, a challenge, a decision, resist the reflex to answer. Count 3 breaths. The pause interrupts emotion before it becomes action. Most people destroy their advantage in those first 3 seconds. If you can control that window, you can control the outcome. Step 2. Observe. Use silence to gather intelligence. Watch posture, tone, inconsistencies. The world reveals its truth to those who stop interrupting it. Silence gives you access to what noise hides: motive, weakness, timing. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors those who see the battlefield before others even notice it exists. Step 3. Respond. When you finally speak, make it purposeful. Say less, mean more. Deliver information like a blade, clean, precise, necessary. Never explain what silence has already proven. This framework isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about redirecting it, transforming impulsive reaction into strategic intention. You'll notice something profound: the less you speak, the more others project. They start negotiating with the image of you in their mind, not the real you. And when perception bends to your rhythm, you've already won. Silence has been misunderstood for centuries. People think it's emptiness, a void, a lack of words, a sign of distance. But true silence isn't the absence of communication. It's the presence of clarity. When you strip away noise, what remains isn't nothing, it's what matters. Every great strategist, artist, or leader understood this. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince from chaos. He wrote it from observation, from stillness. The most brilliant minds didn't find answers by speaking, they found them by listening long enough to hear the truth beneath illusion. Silence isn't passive, it's direction. It points your attention toward what others ignore. It reminds you that reaction is cheap, but restraint is priceless. So when the world calls your calm cold, let them. The lion doesn't answer to the opinion of sheep. It watches. It waits. It strikes once with precision. Because silence doesn't hide power. It focuses it. When you finally master silence, something strange happens. The world still screams, but it no longer reaches you. People still argue, but their noise passes through you like wind through glass. You stop needing to prove. You stop rushing to respond. You stop bleeding energy into chaos that doesn't deserve it. And then one day someone asks you why you're so calm. You'll smile, not because you don't care, but because you finally do about the right things. This is what real strength feels like. Not adrenaline, but awareness. Not dominance, but direction. You realize power was never about volume, it was about focus. The calm you've earned becomes your armor, your silence, your signal. And that peace is what people now call respect. When you reach the quiet, something shifts inside you. The noise of the world doesn't stop, it just loses its grip on your mind. You begin to hear the subtle rhythm behind everything, the truth hidden beneath words. You realize most people speak not to connect, but to distract themselves from what silence might reveal. And once you see that you can never unsee it, that's when the oath begins, the oath of the silent mind. You promise yourself not to waste words on ears that only listen to reply. You promise to speak with purpose, to choose precision over performance, to value the message more than the moment. You promise to let silence do what noise never can reveal. Truth expose character and sharpen thought. Because every time you stay quiet when your ego demands to speak, you reclaim a piece of power you once gave away. You stop being reactive and you start becoming intentional. The calm becomes your command. The restraint becomes your authority. The world starts to notice, not because you're louder, but because you've become impossible to ignore. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors those who act with calculation, not impulse. Silence is that calculation in motion. It's not a lack of courage, it's the highest form of control. And when you learn to control yourself, no one else can control you. So take this as your private vow, let others fight for attention. Let them explain, defend, and perform. You'll do none of that. You'll build presence, not noise. You'll use your words like currency spent rarely but with great value, because the world may belong to those who shout, but history remembers those who think. And when all the voices fade, when the spotlight shifts, when the crowd loses interest, one thing will remain unshaken: your quiet power. The kind of power that doesn't demand recognition, the kind that doesn't need to speak to be understood, the kind that listens, decides, and moves with precision. That is the power of silence, the one every wise mind eventually discovers, the one that separates noise from meaning, chaos from clarity, and reaction from dominance. So the next time the world tempts you to shout, choose stillness. The next time someone demands your reaction, choose observation. And when they mistake your silence for weakness, smile. Because you know what they don't silence is not the absence of power, it is its most perfect form,